Welcome to our Channel X TV webinar today on 50 new marketplaces to expand your business. And I am delighted to be joined by Dex from ChannelEngine. So, hi Dex, how are you?
Hello, hello. Lovely to be here. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. All good. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Now, Dex, it's been a year since we last spoke about marketplaces, and I've got to admit, a lot has happened. But before we get started, for those that don't know you, just tell me, who are you, Dex, and what do you do at ChannelEngine?
Great. Yeah. I'm Dex. I'm actually Dutch, as you can hear by the by the accent, and I actually am the commercial director within ChannelEngine. I've been there for the last 5 years, so been helping a lot of retailers and brands actually move to different marketplaces. Yeah, all over the globe.
Fantastic. Now, before we actually start talking marketplaces themselves, and we know the big ones like the eBays and Amazons, and then there's the newer retailer-leds like in the UK, it's Superdrug, B&Q, Tesco's, etc. But can you give us a bit of an idea of why so many brands are opening their own marketplaces? What's in it for them, but also what's in it for the customer? Why are these marketplaces being so successful? How do we even know where the customer wants to shop anymore?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's great. A lot of the brands said, and I think we can just be honest about it here. They want to expand their assortment, right? So they build a marketplace to do that, but I don't want the risk of having all these different items in stock, right? So they think it's very obvious. The successful marketplaces, especially the retailer-led ones, they do actually something different. They are very clear on what their own shoppers are, what their ideal customers are, what the profiles are of them, and they're able to translate that into where do we need to expand the assortment. And I think that's what we've seen is a big shift in what retailer-led marketplaces get successful and which ones actually stay behind a little bit. The ones that really understand who their customers are, what they're looking for, what the gaps are in their current assortment, and how they can fill that with the right partners are the ones that bring a lot of success. Plus, I do think that a lot of customers, if they go onto the eBay or the Amazon platform, can feel a bit overwhelmed because there's so much that they offer, right? There's hundreds of thousands of products that sometimes it gets a bit difficult to filter on the right ones. And then knowing that you're at the right spot for, your beauty products or your home and living products, yeah, it can help a lot to narrow down that search area a bit.
And a term I've heard, which I really like for the new retailer brand marketplaces, is having permission to sell the product. And that's, will the customer give me permission to sell it? And I think if I walked into Superdrug and they were trying to sell me a garden bench and a saw, I'd be a bit surprised. Whereas those are
Yeah.
definitely products I'd expect at B&Q. But equally, I may expect to be able to buy my garden bench and saw at Debenhams. So for some marketplaces, that permission to sell can stretch a little bit. But for others, there are products that you think that you just wouldn't buy on that marketplace. So I think it's worth always looking at this is from where the customer actually goes to start their shopping journey. And we know nowadays, obviously, a lot of customers will start on Amazon rather than the search engine. But then
Yeah.
others will go to these destination sites because it's where they habitually shop for that type of product. Would you agree with that? And have you seen the same in Europe?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so I think even more so in Europe, we'd see that the search behavior that has changed, from the typical Google search towards starting their journey on marketplaces. But simultaneously, every country has their own, go-to destinations. And I think it's quite clear by now that not Amazon, it's not Amazon that's the actually starting point for all search behavior. There's just a lot of different marketplaces that are in different countries facilitating that piece, which I think is great. It's a large part of what makes a marketplace attractive to new brands, to customers. Is that, yeah, they're just typing in the type of product that they'd like, and they find a side-by-side comparison with the real good results.
Now, one of the marketplaces I instantly want to talk about today is Tesco's, biggest
Of course.
grocer in the UK, one of the biggest in the world. Uh, excuse me. We actually delayed publishing the ebook because they launched 2 days before we were due to publish. So we actually delayed the ebook that accompanies this webinar, and you'll find a link below to download the ebook, just so that we could get Tesco's in there. But you guys are integrating with Tesco's. What have you seen from early days with the Tesco marketplace? What's exciting you, and where do you think they can go in the future?
Yeah, and indeed, I think that Tesco's is the example for how and the fact that there's a solid position with the brand, with the stores, everyone is acquainted with it, is a very good. It's not a far stretch, but it's a very good expansion to actually see for different brands how they want to, also be in that kind of area. So I think that the relaunch of the platform has been very good so far, and we've also seen that there's a very broad range, right? I think I read somewhere that Tesco was planning to put a couple of 100,000 extra products on the marketplace compared to the couple of thousand that they have currently live with their own stock and everything. I think that's a big of a it's a big leap, right? It's a very I would say it's a strong goal to actually go for, and I think overall, of course, every new marketplace has a bit of teething problems, right? There's some things that they might want to clean up a little bit when it comes to making sure that all the products are presented correctly, that they're always in stock, these kind of things. But if they can fix that, I think overall the marketplace is one that's that could really drive a lot of loyalty, because a lot of customers are just used to shopping there already.
And I think there's a couple of things I'd say about the Tesco marketplace. They, as you say, they started off with a very small number of sellers. I think they're still counting them in the dozens rather than the hundreds at the moment. But I do recall Tesco's once had a marketplace before as part of Tesco Direct, which unfortunately, when Tesco Direct went due to financial issues, the marketplace went. But I remember at the time there were retailers who had literally got 100,000, 200,000 pounds worth of stock on hand that they'd ordered specifically to sell on the Tesco's marketplace. And I think just knowing that the sort of levels of inventory that Tesco's can shift if you get it right means that this really is a marketplace that you're not going to be able to avoid if your product set fits.
Yeah, the potential is massive, I think.
And what sort of categories are we seeing so far? I mean, I think I've seen pets and sort of home and garden products on there. What categories are they starting off with?
Yeah, I think it's and they're looking to see if you could buy anything that you would normally buy for your household there. Sometimes that's electronics, like you said, for pet stuff. I think a lot of the categories would be around that, but also for Tesco themselves, where would they actually want to expand their own assortment, right? What they actually purchase versus how they do that on a marketplace model. I think that's the interesting question. So we'll not just see a lot of new categories coming on. I think we'll also see a bit of a deeper assortment for the existing categories that they would already offer.
So one to watch, one to get involved with as quickly as possible, if I would say. But let's talk about the other retailer-led marketplaces in the UK, and there's so many, from the the Superdrugs to the B&Qs, the Debenhams. And what I'm curious about is what success you're seeing with those other marketplaces in the UK, and are there any lesser known ones that we should be aware of? But also, are there kind of equivalents in Europe? Is Europe opening up marketplaces with retailers and brands as quickly as the UK? And if so, which ones? If, for instance, I'm selling on, say, B&Q, what marketplaces should I be selling on in Europe? And again, if I'm selling on Superdrug for beauty products, what are the top beauty marketplaces in Europe to expand to?
Yeah, I think it's great. And to be honest, I see a lot of these different marketplaces are actually expanding and from Europe towards the UK or the other way around, right? So there's a bit of overlap here and there. If we're talking about those pure retailer-led marketplaces that everyone knows in the UK, I think B&Q is a great example, but also The Range, for instance, right? It's just a
Yeah,
household name. And then being able to also put that marketplace model is a super strong combination. I think we all know, right? Mano Mano in France is huge. You have it in the UK. It's just, that starting point in France, I think, makes it yeah, super interesting, not just from a B2C perspective, but also with the Mano Mano Pro in a B2B kind of format, right? So you can sell all your power tools and everything like that. But what's also interesting, I think, is especially if we focus on the France piece, and we have DIY and home and living, and sometimes they blend together a little bit, and
yeah,
sometimes they're fully separated, right? So in France, we also have Maison du Monde, for instance. And they've been expanding so rapidly in France, I think in Spain, they're moving towards different countries. And it's not that you buy, timber or whatever, you really buy furniture. But it also, it alleviates the brand image a little bit of the different types of products you would like to sell. So I really see that in the home and living kind of piece.
mm,
And I think you also mentioned it, right? What in the beauty category and these kind of things. Of course, we know, how Superdrug, for instance, would be doing in the UK as a marketplace. More upmarket, Sephora, super super nice. Curated though, right? So in the curated marketplace space, you will see that you cannot
mm.
just list the
But
items just on Amazon
But
and
if
eBay,
I could
but
hold you there, because
yeah.
this is something I wanted to talk about.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
the difference on marketplaces between the sort of the Amazon and the eBay, where you choose what product to upload and upload the lot, and then the marketplaces, more like the Tesco's, the B&Qs of the world, where they kind of curate maybe, okay, you can sell certain products in this category, and then the marketplaces like Sephora, where it's almost like a product by product approval to
yeah.
get on there. Is that kind of the typical three tranches you're seeing? And do you think people will move from one to another? Are retailer marketplaces likely to get more concerned about product curation? Or as they grow, and B&Q's got, I think the last time I heard, 1.5 million marketplace products on it now, are they going to get less and less concerned about curation?
Yeah, and this is really about how the marketplace wants to portray themselves, right? We see that we put all products on all marketplaces, then there's no unique destinations anymore, which I think would be, it would be a big miss if then, we have an
And
everything
I think
marketplace
you
for
can't do
everything.
that because you still got kind of, have you got permission to sell that product to the customer?
Yeah, that's true. That's true still. But you would see that a lot of the marketplaces, therefore, are protecting their own brand image by actually allowing only specific products or specific categories to be added. And that can mean that we have some brands on our platform that are with I don't know 50,000 products that they could go live on a marketplace, but then they're selling on Sephora or Douglas, which is a good alternative, I think, in the EU for Sephora. But they can only sell 500 products there, maybe 1,000. Probably the ones that are actually quite fast moving, or the ones that would supplement what's actually in the wholesale side of that business, right? Where we see that as a bit of a yeah, they communicate with each other, these two different models. But you would see that the curation for some marketplaces, especially beauty, sometimes fashion, that is what makes a marketplace unique, and their offering unique as well.
Mm. And I think that is interesting because we were kind of moving to a kind of world where every product was listed on every site, and
Yeah.
you're really wondering how much inventory there is behind those products. Sometimes they're spread so thin. But I think you've mentioned a couple of marketplaces there that I find are interesting. Obviously, Superdrug, Sephora in the UK, Douglas in France, beauty marketplaces. Douglas is still relatively new, but actually, so Superdrug, I come to that from the marketplace perspective. How are you seeing these beauty marketplaces progressing? And are there any others across Europe we should be aware of?
Yeah, so how we see them progressing, I think it's really different than what we see with, for instance, these DIY or sometimes even these fashion marketplaces, because there's just a lot of these marketplaces that are not really, and because they're not pushing thousands of brands with each, 10,000 products, the volume and therefore the sales is just a little bit less. I don't think that's a bad thing, by the way. I think that
Yeah.
could be a good thing, but you will see that. Yeah, so it's mostly these kind of platforms. We also see that the Zalando beauty category is has pulled up, which is quite nice, I think. And we also, of course, have a couple of these marketplaces that are spread more globally, right? So for us, of course, the Middle East is um, fairly close with distributors and these kind of things. Yeah, we work really well with the Noon team, and Namshi is also part of Noon, where it's a bit more, of that luxury, a bit more of that fashion piece. Yeah, these are the kind of marketplaces where you would go to actually find the right products for you.
So we've already moved beyond Europe then for marketplaces, which is a good
A
thing.
little bit.
And I think the Middle East is often an area which is kind of overlooked. We look to the UK and Europe, then we look to America and maybe Australia and potentially the Far East, but the Middle East sort of gets missed out a lot. What's really moving in the Middle East in terms of marketplace? I mean, you've mentioned Noom, Namshi. Are there any others we should be looking at there?
Yeah, so it's mostly Noon and Namshi. There's some marketplaces, and of course there's like an Amazon there in Saudi in Dubai. But we would see mostly these marketplaces that are making the difference. And there's also some specialists there, right? So it's Sharaf DG, for instance. You would also see a lot of electronics on. But generally, it's that combination there as well of how these marketplaces fit into the full retail picture, because they're obviously not everyone is buying everything on marketplaces yet. So if we pull that back a little bit towards the UK, towards the EU, everyone is acquainted with the marketplaces. Everyone is buying there, maybe once a month, whatever. But it's a bit different still in the Middle East. So I think that's one of the main reasons why it's overlooked more often.
So fascinating covering the beauty, but there is another sector I really want to look at because it's such wide. We've talked home and garden, we've talked beauty, but what about sport? I mean, it's a different type of product that people are definitely in a different kind of buying mode when they're looking for sporting products. And yes, they might just go to the eBay and Amazon if they just want some sort of new soccer glove or something. But for those that are really passionate about sport, they're going to want specialist sites. What are we seeing there, both in the UK and also in Europe?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'd like to highlight actually two that, as close as they are together, they're also very, very far apart in their targeting. And so what I think, and everyone is acquainted with it, right, is Decathlon is doing great in this piece. And I think that the shout here is that the volume on Decathlon is just so much better than was anticipated before. Because they launched together with a lot of different retailer-led marketplaces, which some have a bit less traction, but we see especially in more of the accessories, the bikes, the tents, these kind of things. Decathlon is doing really well, and they're adding those sportswear brands to it, right? And I think that's a bit of overlap with what the market wants. And we see this kind of a bit more towards mid market, and they're trying to push up market. We see that in stores, they're getting also set up a bit differently. We also see that in the marketplace assortment. And I think that is because they see that there's different marketplaces that are also a bit more in that higher segment that speak to a broader audience. And I think a very good example of that, by the way, is Colisée in France. Colisée is one of those marketplaces where they've targeted their audience so narrowly that they would always be able to say, from a premium perspective for sports, actually for specific sports, you would be able to, always find your products here. And I think that Colisée, for that matter, is also a very good alternative for Decathlon if some brands would find Decathlon to not fit their ICP perfectly.
And tell us a bit more about Decathlon, because we all know the B&Qs and the Tesco's and the Debenhams, but Decathlon's maybe not the even known to be a marketplace by many. Is it a closed marketplace? Is it an open marketplace as far as listing products go? And what type of products are they looking for to expand their assortment on the platform?
Yeah, so actually the Decathlon marketplace is not fully open, right? So it's a bit of a closed marketplace. You'd go there with your brand, your assortment, and then display whatever you'd want to actually launch. We do see that for a lot of these different brands, they're actually also looking at a combination of what is their wholesale and what do we actually want to put on the marketplace model. So I think it's great, but the assortment of Decathlon has been big. I think there's been a lot of different categories. They've moved into nutrition on the marketplace model, right? So both on the protein and the protein bars kind of side, as well as still complementing everything they have for outdoor, for instance, whether that's on tracking, so jackets and Nordic walking sticks, etc., or really tents and camping equipment. So we see that this combination actually makes a lot of sense, but again, it's not every brand that gets to be on that marketplace. However, it has been a very it's not as curated as one of the high end marketplaces, if you know what I mean.
But I think that's something that is really interesting when we come back to thinking about, does a marketplace have permission to sell a product? You wouldn't normally associate Decathlon with protein bars, but it makes total sense for someone that's buying workout kit from Decathlon.
Yeah, and I think this is also where we see marketplaces progressing a little bit. They get better at actively engaging their customers to actually get a higher average basket value and get these kind of things going. And it's just one of those complementary goods that you can add in quite easily, right? It's like you're at the cash register, you're right at the end, all your stuff is already on the counter, and then all of a sudden you see, oh, these mints I also wanted, or this Snickers bar I also wanted to get in. I think this is what's happening there as well, and that's I think great, because it's very brand friendly, right? It's really something that they do to actually also support the brands on their platform.
So before we go, I do want to speak about the Chinese marketplaces, Temu and Shein. And I think they since we last spoke a year ago, they both changed. Shein has started operating, instead of being just a retailer, operating as a marketplace. Temu have started allowing European, UK, and even US brands to effectively ship from local warehouse, which means that the retailer is fulfilling themselves locally rather than goods shipping from China. How quickly do you see Western retailers likely to adopt these marketplaces? And I can't see personally sort of the premium brands wanting to go on there anytime soon. But then we said that about eBay and Amazon 20 years ago. So who knows for the future? But how quickly do you think those marketplaces are going to take off for a European or UK retailer actually selling their products on them?
Yeah. And I think the last comment you make on seeing premium brands on there, I think it's a valid one, right? And the difficulty is that we do see those premium brands on there. They're just not selling themselves. And this is something that we've encountered, some retailers, whether they're European or they're from China, it doesn't really matter, but we see that their products are still being offered there. You can find Adidas stuff on Shein, for instance, even though maybe they don't want to be, affiliated with this marketplace. We'd have to consider a little bit if there's an ulterior motive for these marketplaces, because the more European or American sellers they get on the platform, the less dependent they also are of any tax regulations or other things that would happen in the future. So I think that therefore they're putting a big push there, and I think there's a lot of different marketplaces, especially on the app side, that could learn a lot from how, in terms of gamification, in terms of user friendliness, these apps are actually working. And I think that's what we see and what we will see actually progress further. that a lot of the marketplaces will incorporate these learnings from a Shein or from a Temu to actually to get a bit more competitive on that side, and that actually might bring brands over towards different marketplaces over time. So I'm not seeing a huge adoption of different brands on these platforms, but I do think that they're trying to make waves, and that always helps in a sense of onboarding new brands and maybe giving them some kind of extra incentive to actually start selling on the platform.
And I think you're right that brands will start appearing on them more and more as retailers do, just the same as they have on over the last 20, 30 years on eBay and Amazon. And,
That's right.
And I think it probably won't take them 30 years to get there, the same as the others. But I think one day we'll see quite a few of the sort of more popular brands on there selling themselves.
Yeah.
But last thing before I let you go, Dex, can you give me just sort of 2 or 3 of the most exciting marketplaces you come across this year? People that are really making waves, whether it be ones we've already spoken about, like Tesco's, or whether there's some hidden gems out there that people should be aware of.
Yeah. Well, what I would like to highlight a little bit is, so I think overall, and I won't make it a long story, I promise. Overall, we see that there's a lot of brands that are now utilizing marketplaces in their overall selling strategy, right? So they would look at what marketplace supports this part of my wholesale business, what marketplace supports my never out of stock business in fashion, what kind of overstock marketplaces are there. And the latter is one where I've been really impressed with 24S working on bringing in premium items towards that marketplace, actually covering the gap a little bit for Farfetch on to an extent, and we see the same with Secret Sales, right? These guys have just been working on I almost want to say explosive growth throughout different regions. They've been opening new marketplaces in new countries. You will just see that these are the kind of marketplaces where everyone would like to complement their own business with. Not in the last place, because in that kind of gated sale environment, you won't actually expose or harm your brand image with these kind of discount prices, but simultaneously you'll still be able to actually get rid of some old stock, clear out and the warehouse, get some cash to actually go for new items. So I would definitely see those marketplaces to be here to stay, and they've positively surprised me, not just in the last year, but in the last couple of years, I would say.
So S24 and Secret Sales definitely ones to watch.
Yeah.
Dex, it's been fantastic speaking to you again, and a real privilege that I've got because I'm here on the webinar with you, but people watching the webinar, they don't have the same access to you. So I've got to ask, if they want to have a conversation with you and pick your brains on which are the best marketplaces to sell on, or indeed to find out more about ChannelEngine, how do they get hold of you? Where can they go?
Yeah, so you're always free to go to channelengine.com and look at the different types of content that we have. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I'd love to help to actually look at where can we expand, what kind of regions are we talking about, or how to just make more of the existing brands. And a large part of this we'll pick up together with our marketplace specialists, to help you connect to all these different marketplaces and to be able to actually make the most out of marketplace scope.
I know you hate doing a sales job on these webinars, but just tell us a little bit about ChannelEngine and how can people get a demo if they want to find out more? Because you connect all of these marketplaces we've been talking about, and hundreds, if not thousands, more as well. So what does ChannelEngine do? How can I find out more?
Yeah, and so we're the marketplace integration and management platform. So I think that's that says it all. Supposed to say it all. Great part. We live and breathe marketplaces, so I think you'll see that in terms of expertise and how we help brands actually forward. But mostly, you will see that from the ChannelEngine perspective, we'll synchronize, optimize all content, stock, different prices. We have great great pricing engine. They will always protect your margins, which is super important in the profitability piece these days. Repricing, of course, can also be a big part of that. And doing everything fully automated, right? And I see a lot of brands are struggling with, and so it's easy to get a single connection or an order connection going, but then they struggle with everything when it comes to returns, with cancellations, how refunds and returns can be different, how reconciliation works. These are the kind of things where we excel at. So it's actually, if you're looking at that next level of marketplace integrations, the next optimization in terms of management, this is actually what we do. And the demo form on ChannelEngine.com is there. You can always leave a comment, and I think we'll be able to add a QR code somewhere, maybe.
Yeah, well, we'll get the QR code just on the screen here for anyone that wants to have a demo, so they can go straight to that page. But Dex, I want to once again thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we'll be back here in a year's time talking about marketplaces again. I wasn't expecting Tesco's this year. What we'll be talking about next year, I don't know. But the one thing I can guarantee is that this sector is going to continue to grow, and there'll be more retailer-led marketplaces, and maybe there'll be more Chinese marketplaces or another eBay or Amazon by then. Who knows? But growing fast. So Dex, thank you so much for your time, and really look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you. We have exciting times ahead.